Good evening, everyone. I am Jackie Yang. I am coordinator of the Housing Affordability Coalition. We have a 16-person steering committee that kind of guides our work. And we try with these webinars to do two things. One is to inform and help educate on topics of interest at a particular time, like downtown Columbia housing is now. And we also want to keep our members informed and others who may be interested in joining the coalition informed about kind of what we're up to. So with that, let's get started. Tonight, we are going to, our primary topic, as you know, is the status of downtown Columbia redevelopment. But we always like to take a minute and talk about the housing crisis and the opportunity and those things that are on the plate of the Housing Affordability Coalition. We want to talk about a little bit about what we've accomplished in our 5 years of advocacy as a coalition, talk about downtown redevelopment, and then how to advocate. And at the end, we will have opportunity for Q&A. We would ask, because there's so many on the webinar this evening, if you would put your questions in the chat. When we get to that point, we will be monitoring that and we will respond to as many questions as we can. Let me also say that this webinar is being recorded and it will be, give us a day, hopefully. It'll be available for you to review and to catch up with information you may have missed. And then we'll have also a PDF copy of the slides available at some point. So with that, Dana.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Dana Soar. It's great to
Hey,
see
Dana.
so many people here tonight, new and old faces. Sorry, unfamiliar and familiar faces. I am the Deputy Director of Bridges to Housing Stability in my day job, and I am also on the steering committee of the Housing Affordability Coalition. We're going to do a deep dive in a couple of minutes into downtown Columbia, but first I just want to take a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about the broader issues that we're dealing with, which is our housing crisis in Howard County. And by pretty much any measure, our housing market is not only dysfunctional, it's inequitable in terms of how it's treating people in the county. And unfortunately, it starts with county policies, our very own policies that are limiting housing production far below workforce needs. The real estate consultants tell us that there's an estimated shortage of about 20,000 homes based on current needs. And so these are for homes for people who either already live here in Howard County, and maybe they're living doubled up and want to move out. There's also demand from people outside the county who may be working here or attracted to the schools and want to move here. So that's the pressure on the housing supply. This is demand, and we can't do anything to turn off the demand. The consultants also estimate that we're going to need another 31,000 homes to support the job growth that's expected through the year 2040. So the result of all of that demand is housing scarcity, which means competition for housing. And when you have an essential commodity like housing, the prices are going to go up if we have scarcity and competition. And for renters, let's start with them. Many of them are struggling because rents have continued to rise faster than most incomes. This is the very latest data that we have from the Howard County Department of Housing and Community Development. This is a 2-bedroom apartment. The average rent in Howard County now is over $2,600. A good rule of thumb is you multiply that number by 3, and that would give you the gross income that you need to make that rent affordable. And that, if you do the math in your head, it's about $7,800 a month, which just off the top of my head is about $90,000. And 1/4 of Howard County's population earns less than $75,000 at this point. So we have a big disconnect between incomes and the rents that are being charged. I won't go into a lot of detail about this, but just at a high level, here's a chart that compares 3 categories of renters. There are 32,000 renter households in Howard County. That's about 1 in 4 of all households. And about close to 20,000 of them are doing okay. They're paying 30% or less of gross income on rent. That 30% mark is considered to be affordable. Unfortunately, another 6,500 households are paying between 31 and 50% of gross income on rent. And last, 6,800 households are paying over 50 cents of every dollar that comes into the household for rent. And again, that's gross income. That's before the IRS or the state of Maryland or Howard County gets their income tax and any other deductions like that. So what happens is these households are struggling for financial capacity to do much more than pay the rent. They're struggling sometimes for food security. They're struggling to invest in their children and invest in their own education, choosing healthcare that they can and can't afford. Can they buy the medicine or not? So these households are absolutely getting squeezed. And these numbers, I would say, are 2 years old now. We should get some updates in the next few months that we'll pass along to you. We expect that the numbers will have gotten much worse over the last 2 years. And in general, the trend has been negative since 2010. These counts that you're seeing here have risen 33% since 2010, because again, rents keep rising faster than typical incomes. So that's the renter story. And if you're an aspiring home buyer, you're in a tough spot too, unless you have already have assets and a high income. Home ownership opportunities are disappearing for people who are earning moderate or low income, or even at median income of Howard County, the Howard County community. This is the latest information that we have from the realtors about the median price for homes in Howard County of $550,000. That includes new construction, includes very old, maybe much less desirable homes that were built 50, 60 years ago. If you want to buy new construction, say a new townhouse, you expect to be getting a home that's over 3,000 square feet, and it might have a price tag of $700,000 or $800,000. So again, the dream of home ownership is disappearing for many. So who's getting punished? And unfortunately, it's people who are already marginalized in some way, by and large. And we're talking about people of color. We're talking about seniors, young adults who can't launch, young families who can't put down roots, people with disabilities struggling on fixed income, essential workers, and unfortunately public sector workers as well, including teachers, paraeducators, firefighters, and others who can choose to try to live here and struggle because of the high housing costs, or are forced to live elsewhere and travel in and out of the county. So the Housing Affordability Coalition was formed in 2018 to try to bring more affordable housing to the community. And we do that by monitoring local legislation as well as trends and best practices. What's happening in other communities that's making a difference? Where are communities making investments and bringing more affordable housing online? We try to educate the community through events like this. We also educate in one-to-one meetings with elected officials, with county administrators, to provide our advice about the best way forward to make our community more equitable and a better place to live for more. And most importantly, we organize the community and look for opportunities to advocate, to apply pressure to public officials so that they know that there is a large group of people in the community who want to see better and know that we can do better. We're fortunate to have 44 organizational members and over 700 individual members and allies. And if you're not a member of the coalition, we'll have some information for you a little later on how to join. So because we are focused on affordable housing, just a moment to dispel any myths that might still be in some brains out there about what we mean by affordable housing. First, the technical definition comes from HUD, Housing and Urban Development. It's been around for decades. Affordable housing is housing that consumes no more than 30% of a household's gross income. Doesn't matter whether you're a renter or a homeowner, the same measure applies. And in Howard County, despite perhaps, again, some biases born of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, where affordable housing meant something very specific, that it was not very desirable. In Howard County, affordable housing is blended within communities that offer a range of price points, including market rate homes. And here's an example, fairly recent, of the Burgess Mill community in Ellicott City. So there are market rate homes in here, there are affordable homes in here, lots of local amenities. It's a great place to live. That's what we need more of in Howard County. And as a coalition, we've been advocating for projects and legislation and policies over the last 5 years. Here are some of the examples. Won't go into any detail. If you ask about the key wins, we would start with the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, which was published about 4 years ago. We advocated for it. We supported its development. We contributed to it. And to this day, we continue to hold up this plan and refer back to it in testimony and in education sessions, because this plan was developed with lots of community input and external, consulting expertise in the real estate world. And it provides a very detailed and sobering picture of our housing market today, but also provides recommendations for sensible solutions, including solutions that have already been implemented that we can learn from in other communities. One example is the Housing Trust Fund, another initiative that we advocated for. This is a pool of capital that can finance projects that will bring more affordable housing into Howard County. We push really hard to get this fund created. And it's still early days because the long-term funding source for this fund is not yet established. And so we have work to do to make sure that this becomes a permanent part of the landscape in our housing market in this community. And then last, HOCO by Design, the advocacy work that this coalition did last year really moved the needle on HOCO by Design. That is the once a decade update of the county's general plan. HOCO by Design was the moniker given to the update of the general plan. General plan sets out goals for housing growth, job growth, other infrastructure, employment, conservation, and the like. And we don't have time to go into all the details tonight, but we had a series of demands in our advocacy last year, and we feel like we got some movement, we got some wins, starting with higher targets for growth or production of new homes, including higher targets for affordable housing. So we feel happy about that, but I would note that the general plan is a set of policies. It's paper, it's words on paper, and it's going to require lots of follow-on work related to zoning changes, planning for adequate public facilities, and other requirements before we even get down to projects that would bring more housing, including affordable housing, online. So all of those efforts, the follow-on efforts to implement HOCO by Design and make sure that the homes get built will remain front and center, because tonight you're going to hear about a similar plan, very specific to downtown Columbia, that was agreed on by the elected leaders and the then county executive in 2017, 7 years ago. And you'll hear the status of that tonight. So just because of the successes that we had last year with our advocacy, I just wanted to take a moment and thank more than 60 advocates whose pictures are coming up on your screen right now. These are people who testified one or more times in various public hearings last year to the county council. Another 60 or so people not pictured here submitted detailed written testimony to the county council. And they were instrumental in it, just through telling their stories about the importance of housing for them, affordable housing for them, their families, their coworkers, their employees. Their participation was invaluable. And if you were part of this effort last year, thank you so much. Plan to keep doing it. And if you are looking for an opportunity to try to influence policy in this community, we invite you to talk to us. And also thank you to the organizations, the members of the coalition who were very active last year. Again, the logos are coming up on the screen. We hope you will stay involved. And if you belong to an organization that should be involved in this mission to bring housing justice to Howard County, we hope you will reach out to us. Very briefly, we have a pretty big set of priorities for this year. Again, we'll circle back on most of these with you in future sessions and action alerts, opportunities to get involved, to testify, to add your voice to the arguments. Tonight, it's all about downtown Columbia. That's our focus this evening. And that brings me to the introduction of our featured speaker tonight, Pat Sylvester. She is a founding board member and the immediate past president of the Columbia Downtown Housing Corporation. You'll learn more about CDHC in her remarks. She has extremely deep expertise in all kinds of housing issues through her leadership at the state level and also here locally in Howard County. Has been living in Howard County or Columbia for over 40 years. And as you see on the last line there, she's a lawyer by training, but a houser by choice. And let me turn the microphone over to Pat.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. And first, let me start by saying I'm sorry about the confusion last Thursday. I had something to do with it, and I do apologize. And I am very happy that you're back. So we're going to talk about Downtown Columbia's housing plan, affordable housing plan. I'm going to do my best to make it clear and simple, but I must tell you, the road has been long and winding and more than a bit bumpy. So there's lots of details, but I'm going to do my best to help you see the big picture and to tell you where we started and where we are today. And so without further ado, let's start with 2017. So in 2017, the county council and the county executive executed. That means they took their hand with a pen in it and signed a written document called the Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement to ensure 900 affordable homes would be added in new redeveloped areas of downtown Columbia. And the Howard Hughes Corporation also took their pen and signed that document. So there's a contract and a promise. 400 of those homes would be built by the Howard Hughes Corporation within the communities that they were building residentially as they moved to full build out. 417 of them would be built by Howard County and the Housing Commission in tax credit built buildings that are tied to 5 public facilities that have always been planned for downtown Columbia, and we'll get into more detail as we go forward. And finally, 83 what we call live where you work rental opportunities. These are not bricks and sticks units. These are right now rental subsidies, and this program is administered or operated by the Columbia Downtown Housing Corporation, and the County Housing Department helps us do that. Next slide. So let's orient ourselves. Downtown. I know you know where all these things are, but it helps to sort of understand geographically the area we're talking about. West of 29, not too big, but not too small. Next slide. So where did the units get planned for? The Howard Hughes Corporation's 400 units will go in various locations along with all of their buildings as they build along. There'll be a central library site, which will have housing, which is where our existing library is. The Meriwether Library will be a new library site that's over by Juniper and Marlowe, if you're familiar with the Meriwether district. You all know, I'm sure, Toby's, the new cultural center, and Artist Flats will be built on the Toby site. Then the Banneker Fire Station site will have a new fire station and 100 affordable senior units. And then on the road that sort of loops around the mall, there will be identified a transit center. And that transit center on the ground level will then above it have a mixed income community that will include 80 affordable homes. All of the housing that will be built with these public facilities is mixed income, 50% affordable, 50% market. So you have an idea of where things are. Let's start by going through them one by one, and we're going to start with Howard Hughes. So their obligation is 400 affordable homes to be built as they move forward. They are going to be built throughout downtown. 200 of those will be middle income units serving households at 80% of the Howard County median income, and 200 will be very low income units serving those below 50% of area median income. These 200 very low income units will be leased by Howard Hughes to the Housing Commission, and then the Housing Commission will lease those units to voucher holders or other people who meet this income requirement. The middle income units will be leased at the properties by the property management company. So where are we today? That's the plan, that's the promise. Where are we today? We're in process. So I would tell you the Howard Hughes Corporation is complying with its DRRA requirements. 54 affordable homes have been created so far. 24 of them at the Juniper Apartments, 30 of them at Marlowe. Half of those are very low income units, half of them are middle income units. More are coming. There are 71 planned to go in at Lakefront North, which is just north of sort of Grillmarks, the Costello building. And I would also mention that the units at Juniper are leased. The units at Marlowe are mostly leased, and if they've been leased, they may be in turnover. So those units are serving the populations that they are supposed to. CDHC uses some of the revenue it receives from the commercial enterprises in downtown to help the commission pay the utility costs on the very low income units. And we are also paying or reimbursing the commission for renovations being made to 6 units at Marlowe, very low income units, to accommodate accessibility needs for people with disabilities, to make them more usable by folks with mobility disabilities. So we're making progress. Next site. So the Central Library site and the Meriwether Library site, we're going to talk about these together. This is the current library. What did the plan say? So the Central Library was to be relocated to a new site at the Meriwether District, which Howard Hughes would donate to the county. And on top of that library, there would be a mixed income affordable housing development of about 150 units, 75 of them affordable, a tax credit deal. Once the new library was done, the Central Library would move to the new site, and the current Central Library site, the building would be demolished and it would be redeveloped as just mixed income housing, 50% affordable, 50% market rate, again, about 150 units total. Where are we? 2024, we're delayed. And I'm sure most of you understand that this is delayed. So not to go too far back into the weeds, we're going to start with what happened in 2023. 2023, the administration proposed moving the library to the lakefront. And they did not propose moving the housing with it. They proposed that the Meriwether site would take the housing. There was a ton of opposition to this. I don't want to say no one liked it, because I'm sure there were lots of people that did like it. But what ended up happening is in the capital budget discussions in 2023, a number of requirements were put in place by the county council that the administration had to meet before any funding to even plan the library could move forward. So this stalled any decisions that were needed to move forward with housing development. So county council enacts a budget in May. What happens next? Nothing until 2024. So for 9 months, the administration doesn't do anything in meeting the obligations outlined by the county council. And in 2024, they announce new sites for the library, 5 of them. They hold community meetings to explain these and ask people, well, where would you like to have your library? Which site do you like best? And only 2 of the sites even mentioned the housing component that is tied to the library, right? Now the 2025 capital budget comes in, and the budget says, oh, we're going to plan on the library through FY 2026. No decisions on site anytime before the capital budget current situation is resolved in May. Without site decisions, You can't pursue the financing you need through tax credits to build housing. You must have site control. We need to know, are we building the housing on the Meriwether site all by itself? Are we building it on the Meriwether site with the library? Are we building it eventually on the Central Library site? Or is the Central Library site forever going to have a library? It's important to note that in 2020, the commission hired a developer, came up with a plan for library plus housing, came to CDHC, and we agreed to do some gap financing, but they could never apply for tax credits in 2020 and haven't been able to since then because there is so much confusion, inability to make decisions about the library site. Next slide. So let's go to Banneker. Excuse me. You know what the existing structure looks like? This is the only site planned to have 100% affordable community. It's all senior housing on top of a library. So the plan was a mixed-use facility, fire department on ground floor, 100 affordable senior homes on the upper floor. Other jurisdictions have done this. Now, this is a concept plan. Don't think that this is what it would look like. Okay? You might not like that appearance, but it's fire station below, housing above. Right? Where are we? Oh, delayed. So we are delayed because in order to build a new fire station plus housing, you have to relocate the existing fire station to another site because you need that fire service. And the plans have always been to relocate Banneker to the North Columbia fire station that was to be built. But we have never been able to gain consensus on where to build it. It's been 3 different sequential possible sites along Cedar Lane over the years. We thought we had a decision that the Board of Education had agreed that it would be next to their headquarters building. But it's been close to 2 years now, and there's no written agreement between the county and the Board of Education for the North Columbia Fire Station to be located next to their headquarters building. The FY25 budget shows North Columbia delayed another year to FY28. Now, the other thing that happens is the fire group, fire department, they think now they might want to move the Banneker Fire Station permanently off of its current site and move it over near the Hickory Ridge Fire Station. And so the county has started to talk to an owner about a potential site. But again, no decision, no site. The new Banneker Station in the capital budget is not proposed to be operational until fiscal year 31. There's nothing that tells us whether Banneker will temporarily move to North Columbia or whether it'll stay put until the permanent station is ready. So we have no sites for either fire station. We can't do anything with the housing. We need site control. We need to know on that Banneker site, are we building just housing? Are we building housing and a fire station? Our seniors need that housing. We need decisions. Next slide. So you all know where Toby's is, and this was the one we thought would move the fastest. New Cultural Center and Artist Flats, 87 affordable homes planned for this site. What was the plan? Oh, I kind of jumped the gun here, right? So we're going to rebuild Toby's Dinner Theater and Art Center, and we're going to put housing on top of it. And this is a redevelopment plan. That's what it was proposed to look like back in 2019. Where are we? Delayed. Surprise. So it's important to note here that the Howard County Housing Commission got a tax credit award to build Artist Flats back in 2019 that would have fully funded the housing component. CDHC was putting in some gap financing. There was no county money required to build the housing. But what happened? couldn't get the county council to approve the funding for the new cultural center. There was a whole year of discussion. They eventually approved a certain level of funding, less than was originally proposed, in early 2020. And then what happened? Oh, COVID. And they were unwilling to move forward because of what might possibly happen with COVID. Clearly, none of us knew what would happen with COVID, but we had funding to do the project. And so it sat. And we know what happens. COVID led to higher construction costs. COVID led to inflation. COVID caused all kinds of issues with the construction and the chain of supplies and how much lumber would cost and how much steel would cost. So we now have much higher construction costs, but the county says you have to still build it for what we said we would pay back in 2020. And that now required a complete redesign of the new cultural center. And that's been going on for the past year. Right? That means that those increased costs also increase the cost to build the housing. So now we have housing finance gaps we did not have back in 2019. Now, if all goes well, God help, from my mouth to God's ear, we should have redesigned costs coming out in May. And if they are within the county's budget, then there should be a land transaction this summer. And the Toby's and NCC project should be able to begin construction. It's a phased project. It's a complicated project, right? The housing has to be built on top of the new cultural center and the parking garage. So it can't start, even if they start building the other pieces this summer, until probably the summer of 26, which is the earliest date for housing occupancy by the estimated by the Howard County Housing Commission is 2028. And that's if everything goes well from this moment forward. Delay. Okay, so last project, transit center. Now, we all knew from the very beginning that the transit center would be our last project far out in the future. So we haven't had, what's the plan? It will be a new transit center to be built near the Columbia Mall, and it will have mixed income rentals on top of it. So what's our current status? FY budget projects final design and construction complete sometime between FY 28 and 32, sometime within the next 4 years. If you estimate it takes about 2 years to build anything, that would say the earliest housing occupancy is now FY 34. Now that's the same thing they said in FY 23. So technically, I guess we can't call it delayed yet. Not so sure it won't be at some point. So that's the excitement. Now, live where you work, rental opportunities. Let's close with a winner. So let me start by telling you that CDHC serves as a Downtown Columbia Housing Foundation per Howard County law. We've received the funds that Howard Hughes is required to pay under the DRRA to create affordable housing. And we are the sole nonprofit entity, we are the sole entity focused on bringing a full spectrum and diverse mix of housing to downtown, including affordable housing. We certainly have great partners in the coalition, in PATH, and other groups, but they look at the entire county. Our focus is on downtown. So the Live Where You Work rental opportunities was a program that we had to figure out what to do with because the DRRA didn't give us a whole lot of instructions. So we decided to model it after the MIHU program. So it serves the same income levels, 40 to 60% of AMI. We provide short-term rental subsidies. So we don't build, there's no hard units. And we partner with employers in downtown to help their employees. Right? The program is funded by the development fees paid by the Hughes Corporation under the DRRA. So as Howard Hughes has to pay more. So when they pull permits, they have to pay a Live Where You Work fee after they hit a certain number of units. So when they pull their permits for Lakefront North, we will receive about $1 million. When they pulled permits for Marlowe, we received funding. Right now, we have partnered, we opened the program in 2019, partnering with the hospital and helping 4 of their employees to live in. Now, we can only spend the money in downtown, so they have to live downtown. The employee pays the MIHU rent, and the employer and CDHC share 50-50 the subsidy necessary to cover the market rent. So the landlord has to agree to accept our subsidy, and the tenant moves in and has a lease just like anybody else. Hospital was our first participant. Vantage Point Residency was also a participant, actually still is. They still have 1 person still participating in the program. They had 2. And then we worked with the county in order to help, because we had a lot of employers that wanted to participate, but they couldn't ante up the 50% share in the rental subsidy. So the county used its American Rescue Plan funds and dedicated $500,000 matched by CDHC to help. We have 6 local small employers, and we are helping another 10 employees live in downtown near where they work. So to date, 16 workers and their families have benefited since we opened in 2019. 4 of those households have graduated, have completed their 3 years. So one of our dilemmas was we were optimistically hopeful that Artist Flats would be open. So these folks with 40 to 60% incomes would be able to move into affordable housing in downtown when they completed their 3-year term. Clearly that hasn't happened, and they have struggled to find sustainable housing in Howard County. Some of them have. 1 household actually purchased. Their household grew and they had additional income. And another person moved back to Anne Arundel County. Some of them have found sustainable housing. So the transitions are tough until we get more affordable housing opportunities for our workforce. These are our workers. These are the folks that work at the hospital. But we're very proud of this initiative, and we hope to continue it moving forward. So to sum, successes. Howard Hughes is moving forward. We're getting inclusionary units within their other buildings as they move forward, and they've been very cooperative with us of trying to improve accessibility of those units for the very low income folks, to help people with disabilities be able to take advantage of living in downtown. And we have moved forward with the Live You Work rental opportunities. So what's not working? 417 affordable homes not yet built. More delays are ahead. And who or what is responsible for the delays? It's the county. I got to tell you, when I worked to negotiate the DRRA as part of CDHC, it never occurred to any of us that our problem would be the county. We always worried that Howard Hughes would not do what it said it would do. We did not expect that the county would not be a good partner here. And I get that COVID does something and changes perspective. All of these facilities were in the original 2010 Columbia Downtown Plan. So it wasn't like we made up these ideas. We built on what was already in the plan. And I get that public facilities require perhaps different decisions and funding today than was envisioned back in 2017. But you can't just not decide. You can't just drag your feet. And you can't just ignore the 417 people and families that need the housing that you promised in 2017. That's just unacceptable in this county. From my county, I find it appalling. And I think that's probably my last slide. Yep. I'll take questions after the next slide.
Pat, thank you for, number one, all your hard work with the Columbia Downtown Housing Corporation. for your leadership, and for your passion. Affordable housing, you could not ask for anyone to speak more eloquently and knowledge-based than you have. And thank you tonight. This is a very complicated topic, which you boiled down to making it less complicated, but there's a lot of moving pieces in it. So thanks so very much, Pat. So for those of you gathered here tonight with us, thank you for attending. I would, on behalf of the coalition, we'd now kind of move into our advocacy ask. And what we are going to do is in the next day or so, you will see a petition that comes to you that will ask you to support moving downtown Columbia projects forward, not delaying them anymore, making sure that there is whatever funding needs to be in the capital budget for next year to move these projects forward. And this is this was our argument when we testified in front of the council about the FY25 budget 10 days ago. So we'll be asking you to do that. We also encourage you to contact your council people. They listen, they hear you. We hope that that will spur them to look hard at this issue and help work within themselves, with the administration, with us, with advocates, to help get downtown Columbia back on track. And here are your council members. And then, of course, if you're not a member, we would very much enjoy you becoming a member. There'll be a link to get you to join up for membership. And let me just go back to the petition you'll receive and the emails. In that petition, we will ask for your signature. We will submit those signature with the testimony that we submitted, that we delivered in person. But there's also a place in there that asks for comments. When we get comments, just so you know, we compile those comments and we send them to the county council with the record of who signed. So there are questions that we can just help make sure your voice is heard. So that's what we're going to be asking. Focus on the capital budget, sign our petition, share it with your friends and colleagues. We want to make this, it's you all, it's great for us to go and testify, but it's your voices that really have significant impact. And we ask you to speak up on this issue on downtown Columbia. And I think with that, we'll move to the Q&A. And I'll start with one that I'm not sure we have an answer to, or we need an answer to, but our first question was related to the current library site. There's supposed to be a road that goes through there. What does that do to the housing? How can we put housing in? Pat, do you know the status of that conversation or deliberation?
So I do know that there are people that say there's a road that's supposed to go there, but I do also know that there's a road right next to it that seems to work pretty well. And I would say that the DRRA specifically says that the existing central library site will be transferred for mixed income property. And my guess is if some of the site is needed for the road, then the property might be a little bit smaller or moved to a different part. I have heard people say that the whole site's going to get used, but I haven't heard anybody that actually has those facts say that.
Thank you. Another question. Are there enforcement mechanisms in the DRRA?
So there are enforcement mechanisms. There are two parties to the DRRA, the county and the Howard Hughes Corporation. So they are the only two entities that could bring an action against the other under the DRRA. However, there is also what we call the four-party agreement, which includes Howard Hughes, the county, CDHC, and the commission. And that four-party agreement also has enforcement type mechanisms in it and procedures for how the parties can work together to solve problems that we knew that there could certainly be things that would come up that no one could have predicted and written into the DRRA. So there are provisions in the four-party agreement for the parties to get together to try to solve problems and work together, and everybody agrees to work reasonably and in good faith. There are provisions that allow a party to call, so to speak, another party to the carpet, send a letter to say you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and a certain time period in which you need to do it. And so there are those provisions. And I think we are hopeful. We were always hopeful we wouldn't need them. And I remain somewhat hopeful that nudging is all that's necessary. But yes, there are steps that could be taken. But again, without collaboration and partnership, legal suits isn't going to get the housing bill.
Okay, thanks, Pat. There's a question. Thought there was supposed to be affordable housing in the former Flyer building, but I didn't hear you mention that. Can you tell me if there was supposed to be housing there?
So at one point in time in the negotiation under the DRRA, there was a proposal that perhaps the Flyer building was close enough to downtown that it could help meet the affordable housing goals for downtown, but that never got finalized. And then when the county decided to look at, so it's not in the DRRA. In the end, the Flyer building was never included within the DRRA. And then at a later point in time, the Flyer building was, the administration asked, what should we do with it? And CDHC and others have certainly advocated that housing be there, but it has not been the county executive's choice to put housing in. We have been affirmatively told on many occasions that would not happen.
Pat, does the affordable rental housing include Howard Community College students?
I'm not exactly sure of the question. So the Howard Community College is not within the downtown footprint, but we did reach out to the Howard Community College board and president back when we were developing Live Where You Work, just as we reached out to the hospital, because we had some flexibility in how we developed that program to see if they were interested, and at that time they were not. But if the community college wanted to be an employer and participate in Live Where You Work, that's certainly something we could entertain and talk to them about.
If I could jump in, this is Dana. This may be a question related to some recent funding from the county to the Columbia Housing Center to provide rental assistance for students at HCC. So if you have an interest in that program, which is rental assistance for a period of time, just Google Columbia Housing Center and you can find information about that program on their website.
And I'm pretty sure that there would be nothing that would prevent them from helping a community college resident student live in downtown and pay their rental subsidy. But the Live Where You Work program is a different vehicle.
Right.
Thank you, Pat. It's a comment that, Pat, that you rightly addressed the failures by the county. Is it correct to say at this point that Howard Hughes has no legal responsibility to help with any of the tax credit sites?
Oh no, they definitely have responsibilities. So the DRRA requires them to do certain things. There's certain pieces of land that they may have to donate or transfer in order to enable a property to go through. I couldn't be exactly specific. They have to transfer the Meriwether site to the county to build the housing. They have to make donations or development fee payments to CDHC. They have made the largest ones that are designed to basically be the gap financing for the tax credit deals. There's nothing that would prevent them from being more helpful, but there are obligations within the DRRA for things Howard Hughes needs to do to facilitate, but they can't take over. It's not their job to do it if the county doesn't do it.
Thank you. Thank you. How long do the tax credits that were granted in the past last? And I think that's the Artist Flats, correct?
Right. So it's my understanding, and I used to administer the tax credit program, that the state has been extremely generous in what we call rolling the tax credits. They received an award in 2019. We're now 4 years later, and it is my understanding that those tax credits will be available when that project is ready to get their financing in next summer. That the state is continuing to do what it can do administratively to keep that award solid, so to speak, which is very unusual. My guess is COVID probably helped them figure out how to do that, but typically tax credits need to be used in the year or the year after they're awarded.
I would just add to that it's my understanding that the state has also, in addition to the tax credits, provided some gap funding to the commission to help close the financing gap for Artist Flats also. So the state has been helpful.
Well, but I would mention on that, when we talked about the fact that the housing finance gap for Artist Flats is also tied to the fact, while the state has a lot of money in that deal, the state also pulled back some of that gap financing that they had promised, and there's an effort in place to try to get them to bring it back.
Right.
And CDHC added another $1 million to try to help fill that gap as well.
We've just had a court decision against Howard Hughes, enabling Costello to move forward with the project they had. And the question is, what, if anything, is required of Costello if they build housing on their lakefront site? Do you have an answer to that, Pat?
So what I would say is that if their site is within the downtown footprint and is covered by the DRRA or the statute, then it would have an MIHU requirement, but I don't know whether that site is within the downtown footprint or not. So it may be that they have the normal MIHU requirements. They may have no requirements, but they could have, there's a possibility they're not covered by the DRRA, but they would be covered by the MIHU law that applies to downtown for properties not covered by the DRRA.
And it's certainly not beyond reason to think that since they're not covered in the DRRA, if indeed they build residential housing there, that we could talk with them, administration could talk with them to talk about their affordable, doing more than just MIHUs. There's always a possibility. I'm not sure that they would do that. The financing makes it challenging, of course.
Right. There was no MIHU requirement in the tall building that they built. They've already built. And we had talked to them early on before the DRRA was even negotiated about putting affordable units, and never reached agreement with them. But I know Howard Hughes will appeal the decision that just came out. So I don't know what Costello's obligation. I'm sure Costello knows what his obligation is.
Yes, I'm sure he does. Exactly. We're getting close to our 8 o'clock hour. Time for just a couple of more quick questions. Number one, and they're more general, and I'm just going to combine them. Is the county actually interested in moving these plans forward, or just doing lip service? And what's the picture that we're currently looking at or we're looking at?
I
Some
can't.
closing thoughts, Pat?
I can't speak for the county. I think the whole public facility dilemmas for each of those projects, you know, when you get in the weeds, you can get so caught up in the weeds, you don't see the forest for the trees. The housing's getting lost. And I don't know if that means they don't really want the housing, or it just means they're really focused on the public facilities and they forgot about the housing. And I think we need to bring them back to say, we need to do the housing. Let's get moving.
Which I think is a great summary statement, and brings us back to what the coalition would very much appreciate all of you and your friends and colleagues stepping up and signing the petition, contacting your council person, and helping to, hopefully this webinar has helped get some data and facts. There's a lot of myths and misunderstanding, et cetera, that you can help share the current situation and where it needs to go and move forward. And that's our bottom line, is we just want the projects to begin moving forward. And there are some other comments in the chat, which we will capture and we will feed back to you individually. We can, because we're at our 8 o'clock hour. We very much appreciate your attendance, your contributions, and look forward to seeing you out there on, with the Affordable Housing Voices Raised. Please join us.